Hey everybody, this is Wes Fryer. It is Saturday, March the 8th, 2025, and I am up early. I am on a walk in our neighborhood with our dogs. We actually went to a concert Wednesday night, and our dogs have to spend a lot of time inside basically, and we're feeling bad for them, so got to get out and do some walking. Our robotics team, I've got to go up to school this morning because just got to verify our parent volunteers are going to be there. And anyway, it's Saturday. I'm not going to talk about walking dogs. I want to talk about trusted voices as we resist and heal. My friend Lucy Gray, who is a Chicago-based educator, has been having weekly meetups. We just had the fifth one Thursday night. It's called Thrive EDU. You're invited. You can just go to thriveedu.substack.com and you can get to it. But actually, and what she recommended to me, I've been listening to as a podcast. And I just want to share this out because finding trusted voices that we will listen to in this absolutely crazy information environment and political environment that we're in is so vital, okay? And so what she recommended to me was Rachel Maddow's podcast. Now, there are folks out there that just hate MSNBC. I have not been, I don't tend to ingest and watch a lot of mainstream media in terms of like, I don't watch television much. But this past summer, I did listen to Rachel Maddow's book called Prequel, which is the story of how here in the United States, leading up to World War II and in World War II, we had a lot of really courageous and brave folks that opposed fascism. Because, there were people like Henry Ford who were very loud anti-Semitic folks. Anyway, I could go on and on about this. But we had U.S. senators that were literally working for Nazi Germany, and they were outed to law enforcement that eventually took action. Anyway, that was my introduction to Rachel Maddow, was her book Prequel. I recommend that. Part of the playbook that we need to understand and study today is the playbook of the past. The people who have successfully resisted, and I'm sad to say this, but fascist oppression. Fascist oppression was what World War II was all about fighting. And we also have our African-American brothers and sisters and many other people of color and allies to the civil rights movement, which has been hundreds of years ongoing, struggling for civil rights, and that's for human rights. Okay, so Rachel Maddow's podcast is great. I've been listening to it. I'm going to share a post about that because there were lots of protests around the United States standing up for science yesterday. And there are just some of these facts and statistics coming out about who is being appointed to these different governmental roles in her latest podcast for March 8th. It was last night. Rachel Maddow said this guy Whitaker that's been appointed as our new ambassador to NATO has no military experience, no background at all in NATO. Trump just did away with the position that was monitoring the foreign incursions and hacks into our grid, our electrical grid, our water grid, our critical infrastructure. I hate to say this, but I think we are kind of screwed as a country for a while because the long-term ramifications of doing things like appointing the ambassador to NATO who knows absolutely nothing, has no experience in prior, credentials, is going to be just terrible. The rumor was the Department of Education was going to be dismantled this week by executive order. And the Secretary of Education, who was appointed by Trump, publicly said on a news show last week, she didn't think it needed to exist. I read that Alabama alone has like almost $2.5 billion in federal funding, and that's just going to stop. And their, Secretary of Education has told their schools to just brace for disruption, massive disruption. It is overwhelming, okay? So here's my number one recommendation for you. I started a website this last week. It's been a long time in the making. It's called resist and heal, okay? Part of what we need to do today is resist. In many parts of the United States, protest has not been part of our culture because the civil rights movement, it happened in the past. And there are different groups that have tried to portray protesters as either being, paid, not true Americans, and that's something that is a propaganda trope that is running around today, but also just that, protest leads to burning of buildings and businesses, and it's just all chaotic anti-American criminals, okay? So that is not true. If you've studied anything about the civil rights movement, you know that peaceful protest played a huge, massive, gigantic role in the advances that we have made in the civil rights movement. The Voting Rights Act of 1965 might kind of be considered the start of the United States of America as a representative democracy. I mean, you could kind of go back to the early 20th century when we finally gave women the right to vote. But it wasn't until the 1965 Civil Rights Act that we really tried to enforce federally that, you gotta let African Americans vote. You gotta let all human beings who are citizens in the country vote. And so anyway, protest is important. Resist and heal. I'm going to be in Manhattan, Kansas, coming up in a couple weeks for spring break. I think I'm gonna have my first meetup. This is a grassroots effort. Hey folks, like it or not, we're here and we need to figure out what to do. And we've got to take care of ourselves first. We've got to be careful with how much of this news we ingest because it's toxic. When there is so much bad stuff happening, if you just fill your brain with all the bad stuff that's happening, my grandmother, my Grammy on my mom's side, I loved her so much, got to spend so many years with her in Lubbock, Texas, when I ended up going there for pilot training and then getting out of the Air Force and going into teaching. But my grandmother would watch CNN all day long and she would listen to Art Bell Coast to Coast at night. And, she was up on current events and she was fired up about stuff. But she also had a pretty scared and pessimistic view about the entire world and what was happening. That was when Y2K was happening, right? When we switched over from 1999 to 2000. And there were a lot of people, by the way, who really worked hard to make sure that computer systems didn't fail. We didn't have this, massive doomsday. But my point is, we've got to be careful what we ingest. And so part of what we need to do is build community, figure out how to take care of ourselves, how to figure out the trusted voices that we're going to believe, that we want to listen to. And then what are we going to do? How are we going to resist? Because I'm telling you, we do not want the military in the United States to have a coup d'etat like Egypt did in 2013. And I can talk more about that because I was in Egypt a couple years after that. I was in Tahrir Square. I listened to a friend who shared stories about that, and I heard other people tell stories about that. Representative democracy in Egypt's basically done for a while. Maybe it'll come back. But one of the most clear pathways for us to have a violent civil war in the United States would be for the military to seize control. And therefore, there are sadly people in the United States that have firearms and they want to use them against fellow citizens. There's a whole book by that title. I'll talk about that more later. But bottom line, resistance by citizens like you and me is really important. This is a long-term struggle. This isn't something that's going to be over tomorrow. This isn't something that I think is going to be done in my lifetime. I'm 54. I turned 55 this year. So we got work to do. We got community to build. We got to take care of ourselves. We got to go on walks, baby. We got to go on walks. We got to be out in nature. We got to find ways that we're going to feed our soul and restore our spirit and maintain our hope in humanity, because there are a lot of good people out in the world, and we got to keep doing good work together. Okay, so I am sending blessings your way. I hope you have a wonderful day. It's a Saturday. It's a weekend. I got a lot of stuff to grade for my high school AP computer science class that I started teaching 2 weeks ago. But I think my wife and I are going to go on a hike, and I think it's going to get up into the 70s here in the Piedmont of North Carolina. And there's a lot of good, and I'm going to find some of that good today, and I hope you do too. All right, have a great day. See ya.